Welcome to They Live by Film, a film discussion podcast focusing on the Criterion Channel and beyond. My name is Adam Lundy, and I am joined, as always, by my fabulous co-hosts, Chris Askell and Zach Bryant. How are you doing today, guys?
Oh man, I'm doing great, and luckily, I come to you without a story of shitting in my pants, which I'll tell you about shortly here. How are you, Zach?
Oh, just enjoying a lovely, lovely cloudy Sunday day.
It's nice and sunny here in Ireland, which I don't get to say very often, so that's always nice.
Yeah, we over the past few weeks we've had a theme for every week, and it's been COVID, and it's been a few different things now. But so I've got a very John Waters theme for y'all today. Um, are you okay if I just jump in and tell the story? It's pretty wild.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in spirit of John Waters, my stomach just I don't know. I know, Adam. I know you have a lot of curry, kind of in the UK, in Europe, in Ireland. Zach, I don't know what the equivalent with this would be. Maybe a night of too many spicy wings. But do y'all know that feeling when it's just like, oh, you got to go now? Like the tummy, it just hits, and it's like, no, it's now. It's not like 10 minutes from now. It's right now. And I was dropping my wife off. We're traveling this weekend because my wife's getting her tattoo. It's actually turned out really well. So the story ends well. Didn't want to go into the tattoo parlor to take care of business because it's a small space and it's just embarrassing. She's about to spend 4 hours with this guy. And I had no idea about the unholy hell I was about to unleash. So in the little kind of shopping center, they had a barbecue place, which I was like, sweet, guaranteed to have a bathroom. And a convenience store, which again, pretty high chance. Because of COVID, no bathroom in the barbecue place. Convenience store was out of order. I was like, well, this is bad. So where we were in Dallas, there was a road called Beltline that has, well, as of 2005, so this might have changed. Back when we used to live in Dallas, it had the most restaurants per capita of anywhere in the U.S., which I don't even know if that's a good or bad thing. That's a separate discussion. But they have a lot of. So, a lot of bathrooms for the sake of this story, right? Problem was, it was about a 3 to 4 minute drive from where we were. But I don't know the specific area of Dallas where we were, so I was like, I'm going to do it. I got to go. Get in the car. It's 40 miles an hour is the speed limit. I don't know exactly how much I was doing, but it wasn't 40. Getting the Beltline as fast as I could. It's not a visual podcast. It's not a YouTube podcast, so I'll try to paint this picture, describing it the best I can. So I'm driving. It's getting so bad that I'm actually like, my feet are on the floor and I'm lifting up my whole body off the seat just to try to control 1 extra second of them not exploding. I get to this red light in a major intersection, unfortunately, so I can't book it through the red light. Across the street is this poor innocent Thai restaurant that has no idea what's about to hit it. and I lock eyes like my first love. And this restaurant's called Thai Box. I don't know, somehow that felt appropriate. So me and Thai Box are locking eyes. Light turns green. I fly in. I make eye contact with the lady behind the counter, and I say, can I use that bathroom? That's it. She said, sure. In there. 10 minutes later, I sheepishly come out. The story ends well. 10 minutes later, and lots of uncomfortable noises later, I walk out of this little restaurant, order a Thai tea and the shrimp rolls out of guilt, and go about my day. But I'm a 38-year-old man, and I was having those thoughts of like, you know what, this is just one of those moments where I'm just gonna tell the story of shedding my pants because like I can't control it anymore. Every muscle in my body was like, right now, and I was like, no, it can't be. Like, look, it's right there. There's the Thai Box. Just wait. So if that's not a John Waters story, I don't know what is.
Oh, brilliant. This episode of the podcast sponsored by
Thai Box.
whatever Chris ate to cause his bowels to nearly explode.
If you're in the Beltline area in Dallas, go to Thai Box. The Thai tea was excellent.
Good guys and friends of the podcast, Thai Box, who let Chris take a dump in their toilet.
Yeah, that's the polite way of saying that.
Well, look, that's kind of the perfect introduction for talking about a John Waters film. So the first film that we're going to talk about this week is called Multiple Maniacs from 1970. I'm going to read the IMDb description. We were having a laugh about this before we started recording. I'm going to read the IMDb description, which is: three determined women, Divine, Cookie, and Mink Stowell, set out to solve the Sharon Tate murders. That is not what this film is about in any way, shape, or form. Sharon Tate is like a throwaway comment at one point, maybe two, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this film is not about this at all.
Now, if there's a sequel that involves that, I would watch it.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a great film. That sounds really fun. Not that this wasn't kind of fun in its own way. For those who haven't seen Multiple Maniacs, it's essentially about this group of I don't know, like carnies or whatever way you want to sort of describe them. But they're basically a group of performers who do like really degrading performances, and they get people in on free shows and then end up like robbing them. Um, that's how the film starts anyway. But we mainly follow the character of Divine, who is like this sort of legendary. What's the word I'm supposed to use? What's the political correct word?
Well, are you talking about? Are you trying to find like transgender?
Yeah, but I don't know if Lady Divine was transgender
No.
though.
Well,
What's
John Waters
drag?
talked
Drag.
about, yeah.
Drag. That was the right word. Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
drag performance artist. Yeah.
Well, it's complicated because I was reading an interview where John Waters talked about Divine as a person was male, but in film he called Divine her.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, and there's no real good explanation on that. That's just the way Waters explained it when he was going through like the pronouns and stuff.
Yeah. Well, the character is called Lady Divine,
Mhm.
and obviously Cookie refers to her as her mother. So we assume the character of Divine in this film is a female, but the sort of actor performer Divine was a drag performer basically, and it's essentially an odyssey of Divine, going through just having different events just happen to her, and then just seeing how insanely she reacts to those said events. Um, this film has so many freaking talking points about it. It's yeah. Who wants to take the first crack at this one? Because with this film, it's so much happens.
Well, looking at the letterboxd, me and Chris gave it 4, and Adam gave it 2.5. So
Yeah.
I feel like Adam should start here.
I didn't like. And now looking back on it, I think my 2.5 is probably a bit harsh. I think it's probably more of like a 3.5. I didn't like it. It's. I said this in my review. Like I don't care how low budget your film is. I don't care if you're not using professional actors. Some of my favorite films from like the neo-realist era in Italian filmmaking had no budget and they had all non-professional actors. All I care about is if you have a good plot, or if your plot is nonsense, at least try and be saying something. At least try and have a message. And I feel like, and I could be completely off base because I'm a complete John Waters noob. This is my first John Waters film. I knew very little. Well, I knew pretty much nothing about his filmmaking style other than the fact that he liked to shock people. And I was hoping that the shocking would maybe have a point. I assume we're gonna talk about the rosary job scene, and that was one that sort of stuck out to me the most because obviously the scene is just like completely batshit crazy, and it is exactly as it sounds when I say rosary job. It's exactly as it sounds. But during that scene, which it's filmed pretty well and it has like this cool intercut between like the stages of the cross and stuff like that. What's he trying to say with that? Is he trying to say, "Oh, f you" to the church? But then I'm just like, what's the point? I just that's the kind of feeling I got out of this film where, it was entertaining. I was entertained for the 80, 90 minutes that it runs from. It's if anything, it's an entertaining film. But at the end of it, I just came out of it saying, what was the point?
I
So,
guess. Oh, I'll let you start, Chris. You probably have better thoughts than I do.
oh gosh, no. Just to that last point, you mentioned, so to sum it up, and Zach, I really want to hear what you have to say. But to sum it up, this is the kind of film that I think 15-year-old Chris would have loved to make. Like, what I loved about this movie is like it is pretty immature. and sort of, offensive, but it's all done, I think, with, like, I can just imagine this group of friends sitting around being like, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? Wouldn't it be funny if we did this? And just played against what was considered sacred and holy at that time, right? And I don't know. There's this quote from John Waters that stuck out to me. He did a really cool interview in 2016 when this was re-released, and he said, I this is not meant to be. I want to be really clear. This is not meant to be like a critique on America or something. He's like, I love America. He's like, they wanted to get this film banned, and the film went to the ratings board to ban it. And the comment that I got back was, my senses were assaulted for 90 minutes, but nothing in the movie was illegal, so it can't be banned. Like, And so he's like, and in that moment I realized I love America. I love this country. So I think in his own quirky John Waters way, this was nothing more than just a film that was like, they did some drugs and they just made each other laugh, and then they happened to be, talented filmmakers. Like, some of the choices in here are ludicrous. Like, there's so much voiceover, and it's not even interesting voiceover, right? It's just like when Lady Divine is telling her story, it'll go on for like 20 minutes over kind of some of the action, or like, it's some of the choices they made are so awful, but somehow it really works for me on that level of just like, they're just dreaming of these offensive things that they could do. Somebody in our Discord said it was made back when you could still be offensive, and I think that kind of sums up, my feelings on it pretty well. And then there's a lot more to talk about. But Zach, what about you?
Well, if I had to kind of give it a selling point, I would say that Multiple Maniacs is the greatest home video ever made, like home movie ever made. It has the same feelings you'd get, the extreme close-ups, the almost amateur feel. But I think what separates John Waters and why it's got this, I don't, how do I want to put it? This charm to it. And I know charm is kind of a blanket statement, but to kind of go more into that, I think when we talk about like what's the purpose of the violence and stuff like that, what does it mean within the movie? I don't think Waters himself really cares what it means within the context of the movie, just the context of the reaction. And where this came out in very early 1970, this was right at the end of a lot of the counterculture stuff. So he's taken this almost extreme perversion and almost the extreme of what free love would be, and showing like how that's taken advantage of. And I think that's why Sharon Tate's brought up like twice in the movie, because you can cite that as kind of the end of the 1960s and the end of the counterculture era. And this film almost comes off as a counterculture thing, in a sense. At least that's kind of how I take away from it when I watch it. Not necessarily a commentary on anything in particular, just the reaction people would give to events like this, what they see on screen, the joke of it really only has to be funny to them because everyone else is going to be either offended by it, grossed out by it, or something. So the idea of tricking a pastor so you can go film a sex scene in a lesbian sex scene in a church is just a funny joke to them, and the reaction that comes from it, not necessarily it has any basis on the plot or have any deeper meaning within that actual story.
And see, that's kind of like my problem with it, though. And I just want to sort of put this out there. I'm not like a big Christian or anything, and I'm really paid off about what happened. Like, I'm an atheist, so I don't have a ball in this court. I just want to put that out here first. But like, to me, like, from what you guys are describing and from what I sort of noticed, it kind of plays off like a bunch of kids pulling a prank, and you kind of ask them, why was that funny? And they're like, oh, it was just a prank, bro. That kind of way. It's not really funny if you look at it. It's funny to them because they're the ones doing it. But, and I'm not saying the film isn't funny, because it has some of the wildest, crazy, funny dialogue in a film that I've seen in a long time. The film did have me laughing at some of its dialogue, but just the overall sort of message of the film just kind of comes across like basically John Waters kind of saying, "Oh, it's just a prank, bro."
And I think it comes off, Waters' sense of humor is always going to be either you like it or you don't, and there's no way to ever convince someone to. But when I look at John Waters' films, he's childish, not in the sense of intellect. I think he's a very intelligent person. I think he's very thoughtful, but he kind of sees the world in a very childish way. Things in almost extremes and almost at face value, and you know, basically almost a naivete sort of way, not necessarily in a bad way either. Like I said, I don't find him unintelligent. I think that's just how he still sees the world, and that's really, it's almost like if a child were given having the ability to make a movie with this subject matter, this is how it would come out. And I think that's just how he is, and that's still prevalent in even his more polished work. That's just his sense of humor, I guess.
Yeah, he's very I hate dogmatic maybe about sort of presenting himself as innocent, right? His innocence is very like in any interview he's very stubborn about defending like the innocence of his work, and I think he even in his personality he always goes back around to like the end result of watching his movies I think is way more shocking than John Waters himself as a person or as an interviewer. Like he's aware of what's happening, he's aware of the joke, but he stubbornly defends the purpose of the film as being this kind of fun, playful, innocent thing. Um, but so it's confusing when you watch the movie because you're like, there's a woman who's sleeping inside church uh, stalls and churches, and then having sex with strangers by using the rosary and reciting the 12 Stations of the Cross. And this is her, and she's so excited to meet this celebrity who's a killer, Lady Divine. And that's where the line comes in. I'm so excited. I've never given a rosary job to a celebrity. um,
and,
and just
it's oh sorry, yeah.
last thing, and I'll say, and the perfect way to kind of sum this up is John Waters filmed the first viewing of this movie in a church.
That's
He knows
awesome.
what he's doing.
Yeah, and it's I think if you take any other director, and especially when you think about like all the most disturbing films ever made, you have this really bleak tone and this really heavy atmosphere for a movie that deals with sexual assault and a bestiality in some ways, I guess, and multiple other things. It's very light. I mean, when you really look at the tone that he goes for throughout the whole thing, at no point does any of this stuff come off as heavy. Even when they're like brutally murdering people at the beginning of the movie, it never feels heavy. It never feels like disturbing. And well, I guess it does feel disturbing, but not in a way that just brings you down. It's almost like, I'm not going to say uplifting, but it's almost like that contradiction's there with Waters, kind of how Chris was talking about.
I think the way it was filmed as well, it's like a John Cassavetes film on meth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so true. I caught the Cassavetes thing as well.
Yeah, just the grainy film, and it reminds me a lot of like Faces. The way
Mm.
it's filmed reminds me a ton of Faces, which obviously we watched sort of early in the film club days. Reminded me a lot of that. But you kind of brought it up there, Zach, and I suppose we have to talk about it. The lobster. What's with the 15-foot lobster? You know.
Coke is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, there's a scene in this film that features a 15-foot lobster that comes out of nowhere, and I don't want to say it doesn't have relevance on the plot because it technically kind of does. It sets Divine off in her final rampage, um, but yeah. So the lobster, no, no metaphors for the lobster. It's just a lobster. Is that
I
what
feel
we're
like,
thinking?
like I said, I think Waters is an intelligent guy, but I think he just thought that was funny. I can't imagine he has some deep meaning behind it. He's just like, it would be kind of funny.
Yeah,
There you go.
I was trying to find the quote really quick, but in the same interview where he was talking about how much he loves America, they obviously brought up the lobster scene, and he said, I'm never going to say that rape is funny, but when you're being raped by a lobster, it's kind of funny. And then the follow-up question is, there's rumors of a lot of cocaine on the set, and basically he's like, those rumors are true.
Oh man, I'm 2 for 2.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I wonder if the lobster has some kind of Jungian context, perhaps.
Maybe some Campbellian in there.
Yeah, someone more intelligent than us can probably write a review about that kind of stuff.
This is kind of it's related, but it's kind of a tangent. My introduction to Waters, which I think is like I watched the episode he's in The Simpsons. That was my introduction to John Waters, and it's are you either of you guys familiar with The Simpsons? Like, do you watch it or anything?
I haven't seen The Simpsons in about 10 years easily.
Well, that whole episode was kind of a big deal because it was about dealing with homophobia and stuff like that. But there was always just this innocence with his portrayal with as his character John. And I think when I finally started getting into his films, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I think that really like put me in the right mood to like his stuff. I feel like if I had started with this and this was the first thing I ever watched and I had no introduction to how he is as a person or his sense of humor, I think I would just probably hated it, or I wouldn't have taken to it as well as I did.
Are you talking about the one where he opens up a nostalgia store?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Homer. My
Yeah.
favorite joke in that whole thing is where like Homer wants to teach Bart not to be gay, so he like takes him to a steel mill, and they're closing up for the day. And they pull this thing, and this music starts to play, and Homer's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "We work hard, we play hard," and it turns into like this basically this nightclub. And Bart's like, "Dad, why did you bring me to a gay steel mill?" And he's like, "I don't know."
Is that the episode where he like sits Bart in front of like a billboard?
Yep, that's the
Okay,
one.
I remember the episode now.
So here we go. Sorry, I found the quote. So the question is, where did the idea of the lobster come from? Fair question. And then John Waters says, well, in Provincetown this summer, someone said that acid must have been pretty good in the 70s. And it's a fair comment. Because I wrote the lobster scene in Provincetown, and there is a very popular postcard of a giant boiled lobster in the sky over the beach. And while tripping, I did think of that for the rape scene. So there's John Waters.
There we go, straight from the horse's mouth on that one. John Waters did drugs and thought it was funny. There's no subtext here. There's nothing Jungian or Campbellian or Brechtian about this. It's
disappointment.
He did some drugs.
George Miller should have done this movie.
We'll do the remake, and it'll be the best movie ever made.
Now, I don't mean to get too highbrow on you guys, but my only introduction to Waters before this is in the first 5 seconds of The Creep by Lonely Island. So there you go. He literally just comes on to start the song and says, "My name's John Waters, and this is The Creep." That's it.
Have you seen Pink Flamingo by any chance?
No, but I know of the scene.
Well,
I know about the scene.
Well, the thing that I think the last thing he has in his filmography, and I haven't seen it, and apparently not many people have, but he got kids to reenact the script of Pink Flamingos, and I think that's hilarious.
I know. Well, literally, the only thing I know about Pink Flamingos is that Divine literally eats shit. So
yeah,
that's literally the only thing I know about that film, and that's all I need to know about that film to know I'm not going to watch that film.
If you want something a little bit easier, maybe go with Serial Mom. Like if you want to kind of get his sense of humor a little bit better, but not have to make yourself go through a bunch of terrible stuff.
I was very surprised that he had made the original Hairspray.
Mm-hmm.
That Divine played what I know as the John Travolta role, because obviously I've only seen the remake. So I thought that was funny when I looked that up.
I love the sincerity that he talks about how beautiful Divine is. Lady Divine is. Like all the characters are just like blown away by her beauty.
And it's just a 300-pound dude walking around in a wig.
Yeah, basically, it's just. But like, I think in his way, like he's trying to be serious. Like I don't know. I love the way his mind works. I don't know. He goes there. One more quote from this interview. I just thought it was funny, and then I'll have some original thoughts here. But he said, he was asked about the privilege of being recognized by Janus and Criterion, and he says, well, they released all the Ingmar Bergman movies in Baltimore when I was growing up, and Ingmar Bergman, I know it might be hard to see, but he was a huge influence on me. He always had vomit and suicide and adult subject matter in his films. And then Nothing. And then on to the next question. He just lets you, like, sit with that comment. Like, he never like lets in on the fact that he's joking. And I think there's something that, I know, Zach, you used the word charming. I know it's weird to say, but I think I don't know, there's something charming about his work. I like it. It's like, it's very kind of fun.
Well, before I forget, so I was talking about before we started recording about the Sharon Tate thing. That actually the ending of the movie was changed because of Sharon Tate. So originally, while this film was being made, they didn't know who had killed Sharon Tate at that point. They were still investigating. They were still trying to figure out if the other murders that happened soon after were related. And while they were, and then the end of the movie was supposed to be to link that Lady Divine was a part of the Manson family, with no knowledge that that they had killed Sharon Tate at that point. And when they found that out, they actually got the newspaper that that they have in the film, and apparently John Waters still has this, but they just had to change it like all of a sudden, like, oh well, she was lying the whole time. They had nothing to do with Tate murders because I don't know. I guess getting raped by a 15-foot lobster isn't like a little insensitive and bad taste, but I guess actually being the murderers of a case that was just solved like 2 weeks before might be a little bad.
That's interesting you say that because I don't know why I had it in my head that this is like completely two different eras. And when they were talking about, oh, such and such killed Sharon Tate, I assumed they were talking about something that was like 10 years earlier. But now I've
No, it
just
was like
realized,
7 months.
yeah, I know it's just like you were saying, like the end of 60s counterculture is just such a huge change in just, in culture itself. And it makes you realize sort of how close things were. And I've just sort of copped this now to say, yeah, it's 1970. So yeah, that's kind of funny. That they were talking about this stuff in the middle of this film.
Yeah. The other, the lobster obviously is the most memorable rape scene in the movie, but right before that, there's another one, right, where Divine's walking around trying to get revenge, and
Yeah,
then
it was around the middle of the film. Yeah.
yeah, and even John Waters in his own kind of funny way, like he doesn't ever, like, nothing ever happens without like a little twist on it, and so like the people that assault Lady Divine, one of them is uh, seems like a man wearing a dress with a beard, and then there's the other woman that kind of holds her down. But there's like these, even like everything that happens, there's like always this little twist of kind of humor thrown in and throughout the whole movie. Yeah. Anyways.
I just want to note that somebody let their kid play in a John Waters like this movie in 1970 and let him dress him up like a king and everything. It's like, yeah, this is fine. I don't know who that kid is, but maybe it's somebody's.
I would have to hope it's like one of the actors'
I hope so,
kids
or either that, or some
something.
parent was like, "How much you paying for me to let my kid be in this movie?"
Yeah.
The kid itself doesn't do anything controversial, right?
No, it's
No,
just it's right before the rosary scene.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure when the parents saw the movie, they're like, "The hell?"
I thought this was a nice Christian documentary about,
Yeah.
Jesus.
We filmed Jesus earlier, so this will all be fine.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back to Collection Corner, everyone. Thank you for listening to that water segment with us, and I hope it was enlightening and humorous for y'all. The theme for me this week in Collection Corner is going to be going full on Fuller. So I saw The Naked Kiss last month, and I said, "Yep, that's a director I'm going to love, no doubt." The way the story was told, the way the cinematography, Stanley Cortez's cinematography just knocked me out. It was amazing. And so the way that my brain works is to say, well, let's go back to the beginning and see what Sam Fuller did kind of early on. And I realized that with a lot of the box sets that are out, it wouldn't actually be impossible just to go complete on him. I mean, it might get a little expensive, but it wouldn't be impossible. Most of his films are released, so that's what I've been doing the last month in the background. And I'm excited to talk about now with the Criterion sale that just happened, the flash sale that just happened, and with some kind folks on eBay who did the purchasing of certain box sets early on and were willing to hand them over to me for a price. I've now got the Indicator set, which is Sam Fuller Columbia, right? Which was not that bad actually, price wise. I feel like if that is out of print or the limited edition is over, it's recent enough to where the prices aren't terrible yet. Then I also found the Eureka set, the Fuller at Fox.
So
Or
you must have paid a pretty price for that one. That one's definitely out of print.
that one's been out of print for a minute.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision. There was one that was just over $100, and it was like 110 or something like that. And I went on and I looked for the other ones were all closer to like 180, 190 or something like that. So I felt like I may have potentially been taking uh, advantage of somebody who was in a hard time financially if they're willing to part with it for so cheap. So I did some ethical checks on if I should offer them more. But ultimately, I decided I don't want to start controlling their if they're willing to sell it for that price, I'm definitely willing to buy it for that price. So I just let it go and got that, and then uh, just so happened that right after that, the Criterion Flash sale happened, and so I should have when I get back the first three Fuller films are in Eclipse box set from Criterion, and then I already had Shock Corridor and White Dog, and so the only one I had to get was Pick Up on South Street, which I later found out was in the Eureka set. So damn it on that. But anyways, I have two different versions to watch, and then there's a Warner Archive sale coming up in mid-March, and the Warner Archive line has basically the rest. So I'll be able to be completed on Fuller by March. The only exception is something that's super interesting. So I don't know if either of y'all have been collecting long enough to know much about DVD labels, boutique labels, but do y'all remember a label called Phantoma from back in the day?
That's a no from me.
Zach, they would have been right up your alley. They had some good kind of genre and horror stuff. But anyways, they did not transfer to Blu-ray, and they're the only ones that put out this film so far. It did not make it to Blu-ray, which is I'll forget the name of the film here. Forgive me, but it's the movie that Fuller wrote and set out to direct was set in Central or South America, and it never got made. And so what? Oh man, sorry, my brain is all over the place here. Anyways, one of these directors that ran in the same circles as like John Leary and sorry, this segment is not very interesting if I just keep searching for this dude's name. Anyways, this one really cool kind of hip director got together with Sam Fuller, and they actually revisited the site where the film was going to be made, and had a documentary about making that film finally. And so I was able to track that down from Phantoma. So that was the final thing that came out for him. And so yeah, I'm in the span of a month here now with some different sales and whatnot, I've gone pretty much complete on Fuller, which I'm excited about. What about y'all?
Mine is not received here. It's still up in California, but probably my big purchase and a price I'm not going to talk about, but I'm pretty excited for it, is in Germany they put out this really nice edition of the 2018 Mandy, and because of my undying love for Nicolas Cage, I just have to prove it to him at some point, even if he'll never realize it.
Friend of the podcast.
Do I?
Friend of the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Nicolas Cage. But this set, it comes in like this fake leathery thing, and it actually includes like, have either of y'all seen the movie?
I haven't actually been meaning to watch it, but I haven't.
Well, in the movie, it has a cult leader named Jeremiah Sands, and he's supposed to basically, funny enough, be based off of Charles Manson. So he has like the failed music career and everything, and they actually include the vinyl record of what his music was supposed to be, which is really exciting. It has a bunch of nice art cards, probably this booklet that I'm not going to be able to read because I don't know German, and but it has a CD soundtrack, just really nice set, looks really high quality, and I'm hoping to get that within the next week if the guy from eBay ever sends it off.
Does it have Johan Johansson did the score for Mandy, I think.
That's correct. It was his final movie.
Oh yeah, cool. So it has the score in there as well, does it?
It does, and it's to me, it's probably my favorite of his between that and Arrival, but it's really good.
Cool. Yeah, he was a really talented guy. For me, I got I think it arrived just about a week or so ago. All the way back in episode one, I say all the way back, that was like 6 episodes ago, but all the way back in episode one, I talked about an Indicator box set that I was getting called Columbia Noir #1. And this week, I'm going to be talking about Columbia Noir #2, which just came out this month from Indicator. It's another gorgeous looking hard card set. Not one of those sort of flimsy digipacks that certain companies beginning with C tend to put out. It's a collection of 6 sort of film noirs that would be like, a lot of them be like B movies, ones you wouldn't have never really heard of, but like just deserve some love. So this one has 6 films. There's Framed, 711 Ocean Drive, The Mob, Affair in Trinidad, which is a Rita Hayworth vehicle, Tight Spot, and Murder by Contract, which I've only seen Murder by Contract out of the set so far, and Murder by Contract is just so good. It's like it's like a French New Wave film before the French New Wave existed. It's just super cool and easygoing, and the main character is just he's just this really like aloof contract killer, and he just goes around wearing a suit and wearing shades, and the gangsters he's working for are wondering where he's going to put the hit out, but he's like, man, I need to go do some fishing first while I figure it out. He's just this really funny dude, and it's a really funny, cool film. So Murder by Contract, definitely recommend. There's a couple like Glenn Ford films in here. Glenn Ford's obviously a big noir guy. And the one with Tight Spot is a Ginger Rogers vehicle, which also features Edward G. Robinson, who's probably like one of the sort of biggest noir actors. He did a lot of work with Fritz Lang, and obviously Double Indemnity as well. He's kind of like the antagonist in Double Indemnity, but he's really the only good character. But in terms of like the plot, he's kind of like the antagonist in Double Indemnity. So yeah, it's a really gorgeous box set. It's in this cool pulpy orange color with some really nice artwork. Indicator, Columbia Noir #2, and Columbia Noir #3 will be out sometime in May. I can't remember the exact date, but I'll be definitely picking that one up as well when it comes out.
Have they revealed what's going to be in 3?
They have. And once again, like 1 and 2, I've never heard of any of the films, but I'm sure they're great.
Just while you're looking those up, Adam, do you by chance know? I don't know why you know this off the top of your head, but are these releases in Region A at all, or are these ones that are kind of exclusive to Blu-ray?
They are. I think Indicator in general are just Region B. They're just like Region B, as far as I'm aware.
Now I don't know if all of their stuff is like this. I know my Vampires and Ghosts from Mars from them is ABC. It has it on their disc. I don't know if yours will or not, but
well, this is B. This says
this
B
is just specifically B.
Yeah, this just has B on the back, so this says definitely just B. Columbia Noir #3. Oh, not only have I heard of one of these films, I've seen it. I forgot all about it. So you have Johnny O'Clock, never heard of it. Convicted, never heard of it. Between Midnight and Dawn, never heard of it. The Sniper, never heard of it. City of Fear, I feel like I've heard of it, but I can't say for sure. And then The Dark Past, which I've not only heard of, but I've seen because it was part of the Columbia Noir Criterion Channel thing that they had out last summer. They had like a collection of Columbia Noir films, and The Dark Past was in it. And I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm pretty sure The Dark Past is still on the channel. I'm gonna look it up now because it's actually a really cool little film, and I think it's only like 75 minutes long. Let me just get the Criterion Channel up here now and just do a search. The Dark Past. It's not. But yeah, I'm surprised that I have not only heard of one of these films, but I've seen it. But yeah, I'm a big noir guy. I just kind of like even like the bad ones. I still kind of like them, even when they're bad. They're kind of like my horror film to you, Zach, or like your sort of weird cheesy Italian films to you, Chris. It's just I know they're bad. Yeah, I know they're bad, but I like them.
So that sounds amazing. If I can redeem myself real quick, let me tell a more succinct story around the last film from Sam Fuller, because I got it up now here, and it's actually, I think it's an interesting documentary. I really want to see. Jim Jarmusch, couldn't think of the name, and Sam Fuller take a trip to Brazil, area named Mato Grosso, up the river Araguaia, where Fuller had been sent to scout a location and write a script for a movie based on a local kind of famous jaguar hunter named Tigrero. And so he takes Jim Jarmusch now, 40 years later, and just walks him through this really remote, kind of scary area of Brazil, and they tell stories together. Which that I'll watch that movie all day long. I'll watch 6 hours of that movie because Jim Jarmusch is such an interesting guy, anyways. For him and Sam Fuller just talking for 90 minutes, I'll watch that all day long.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I haven't seen enough Jim Jarmusch films, but I've liked what I've seen. And he seems like a really cool, interesting dude. So yeah, that sounds really good. I'm a big Sam Fuller guy as well. I have the Fuller at Columbia set from Indicator 2. It's a really nice looking set. I own the Naked Kiss. I don't own Shock Corridor, but I've seen Shock Corridor. Have you seen Shock Corridor? Because Stanley Cortez does the cinematography for that as well.
It's literally up next on my thing to watch. I'll probably watch it tomorrow.
Yeah, it's really good. It's just like a completely different kind of film. And it has some really cool sequences in it. Like you wouldn't think there's a lot you can do, from a cinematography point of view when your main character is at a mental hospital for 99% of the film. But yeah, the film just looks great. Um, yeah, that Fuller documentary definitely sounds cool.
All right, now that we've had our John Waters fill for the day, let's move into the 1958 film The Blob. This is about three determined women, Divine, Cookie, and Steve McQueen, who set out to solve the Sharon Tate murders.
Yep.
Oh, that's brilliant.
A mysterious creature from another planet resembling a giant blob of jelly lands on Earth. The people of a nearby small town refuse to listen to some teenagers, by the 28-year-old Steve McQueen, who have witnessed the blob's destructive power. In the meantime, the blob just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Do you mean Stephen McQueen? Because that's how he's billed in this film.
Oh, is it? I didn't even
Yeah,
notice.
yeah, he's billed as Stephen McQueen, which
Stephen McQueen,
doesn't
my mistake.
doesn't have the same ring to it as Steve McQueen, I think. Yeah, this film is crap, but it's fun, isn't it? That's kind of the only way I can kind of put this film. It's not very good, but it's fun, and it's a different kind of fun and charming that Multiple Maniacs is, because it's cheesy, and it's the kind of cheesy that I don't know if they. I got this feeling that they were trying to take themselves seriously with this film. I don't think this was made, you know, tongue in cheek in mind. I think that they tried to make like a serious sci-fi movie, and it just came off just really fun. And I think it's kind of endeared itself to people, and that's why obviously people still watch it now. Obviously compared to, like, I'm sure the dozens of other sort of creature features that would have came out in this era. Yeah, I liked it. It's the kind of film I probably would throw on again on like a Sunday afternoon if I just wanted something easy just to throw on. But yeah, it's not in any way. It's not high art or anything like that. So, yeah, what do you think? Yeah, we'll go with you, Zach, because you're our resident horror movie buff. So I want to know what you think of it.
The Blob is, it fits right into that 1950s stuff, and there is that charm throughout that whole decade. And honestly, when you look at that era, it is both aged really well and really poorly. Like it has a very different feeling than that they were going for originally, but it's left a really charming aesthetic. I think the colors of the film are actually really good.
Yeah.
I don't know what it looked like before Criterion got a hold of it, but I think it's a beautiful looking film. Some of the effects obviously haven't aged the best, but for their small budget and time and everything, they still hold up decently well. Um, I still think it's a downgrade from the 1950s version of The Fly and The Thing from Another World, which would both also, just like The Blob, get remade in the 1980s. But those two still held up on their own a little bit better than the original Blob did. But it's fun. It's a good time. It's not going to be something it's not offensive. just there, and it's good. I like it.
You say that the thing from another world, thing from another
Mhm.
world, or thing from outer space. What's it called again? Thing from another world, isn't it?
The Thing from Another World.
Yeah, you say that that's better, but does the thing from another world have a jingle? I don't think it does.
It does not, and that does lower it a little bit.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen the Blob, it opens with a literal song about the Blob from Burt Bacharach, who what's this? Oh, he did Raindrops, didn't he? Raindrops are falling on my head.
Mhm. Yep.
Mhm.
That's that he's that kind of easy listening kind of guy, and he sings a song about the Blob. So yeah, that if there wasn't a reason to watch it, that's the reason now.
I feel like y'all were, when we talked about Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, y'all were kind of like, yeah, it was fine. I don't really kind of, not that memorable. It was fine. It was good. And that's kind of how I felt watching The Blob again. I had seen it about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. So watching it again, I kind of felt like I don't have too much to say about it. In fact, in our film discussion that we do on, Friday on the Criterion subreddit, I was trying to think of something to say, and the only thing I could think of was connecting it to becoming the inspiration for Vanilla Ice's song "Ice Ice Baby." And I was laughing because the way that his lyrics line up, it actually works really well because it talks about something grabbing a hold of him tightly. Anyways, I don't really think that's what the song is about, but it worked well for the writing. Um, but yeah, I don't think I don't have too much to say, so I won't say it for long. What's that? If you don't have too much to say, the worst thing you could do is keep talking about how little you have to say. Um, I just thought it was a fun, sweet, kind of innocent horror movie, and the, the only thing, Adam, you said that if they were in on the joke or not. There's one scene in the movie theater where they're watching a horror movie and they're kind of laughing at this monster movie that
Yeah.
made me wonder if it's right before the blob attacks the movie theater and kind of comes in through like the projection windows and at the back and kind of takes over, and it made me feel like maybe they were in on the joke a little bit between that and the theme song. Maybe they were kind of at least aware that this was going to be a light popcorn kind of affair.
Yeah, someone mentioned it in the discussion thread about wondering like would audiences have been scared at this kind of film in in 1958 when it came out. And I think that scene in the theater sort of shows how audiences would have reacted to this film as well. Those days horror films are kind of more like carnival rides, but not like not like a roller coaster, or more like just like a fun little carnival ride that you're gonna just have fun watching. And whereas obviously now they're made to make you feel terrible about yourselves, or really depressed, or make you very squeamish. But in those days, it was like a theme park ride. And I think the film in the theater sort of portrays how I think anyway audiences would have reacted when this film came out as well.
Well, there's a documentary. I think I can't remember exactly which one it is, but it's like Red, White, and Blood or something. But it's essentially the whole documentary discusses how horror changes, and it's very linked to the economy. Like the 1980s and 1990s, when the U.S. economy was doing much better than it is right now. Um, Horror movies were a lot more fun. They were a lot more. There was a focus on that, and I think the 1950s, being right after World War II, I think that would have a lot to do with it as well. I think people were looking for fun. They weren't looking to be scared, or there was nothing at the time that they felt like, oh, well, this needs to be discussed like it was in the 60s and 70s and the 2000s, where it's a little bit more violent.
No, I agree. Um, I'm just trying to look this up because I don't want to make a fool of myself. But why do I? Okay, I don't know why I thought Night of the Hunter was the same year as this film, and what a great contrast of films that would have been. I suppose there's only 3 years of a difference between them. And when you talk about what you're saying there, Zach, about audiences wanting something fun and light to be able to enjoy, the Night of the Hunter is kind of like the antithesis of this film,
Oh,
in
absolutely.
in that sense. So yeah,
Well,
this is 3 years after, but still.
that would even back up the point of why audiences didn't really go with Night of the Hunter to begin with, right? Maybe this movie came out and they were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! We want the Blob. What is this?"
Yeah, exactly. They just want something. They just want something. It's just fun. I feel like this film was kind of gonna is kind of like a few weeks ago when we were talking about the Lady Killers.
Yeah.
There's no real in-depth discussion here about the themes, although I suppose, and I think this is kind of the most overt sort of Red Scare movie really.
Mhm.
It's literally it comes from the sky, it is red, it assimilates people. It's as overt a Red Scare allegory as you could possibly get with a film without the blob literally starting to speak Russian. So the sort of fear of communism and everything like that, which is obviously running really high in at this time in the 50s after World War II. Um, yeah, it's definitely those kind of films. Someone else in the discussion thread brought up how it's kind of different from the H bomb scare films,
Mhm.
like them or Godzilla, the ones where it was more about radioactivity that you were scared of. You were scared of like nuclear bombs and stuff. I think this one is definitely more scared of communism, scared of, something's going to come into your town that's going to assimilate you into this blob, and essentially communism is about, the idea of communism is about everyone being sort of together. Um, and the blob kind of represents that in that aspect.
That would explain too, if you're gonna, if this is an allegory for communism, it would explain how the community was even kind of designed, because they were really well, like, they're very friendly with each other. They're very supportive of each other. They're very strong together. And so that would serve as a nice counterpart to the blob, which was coming in and it was so kind of pernicious, and like, and it grew so fast. Um, is this counterpart there of the town? And in a weird way, this film would also kind of grow beyond time. So like every new generation in theory could have either a political, ideology, or something. We could look at coronavirus in 2020, 2021. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something going on in the macro environment that could probably serve as a proxy for the blob, if you wanted to look at it that way.
Yeah, you could remake it any old time and you can say X. So like if it was in the 70s, it'd be, gay panic. If it was in the 80s, it'd be AIDS. Obviously if it was made now, it'd be coronavirus. So yeah, it is kind of one of those sort of blanket allegories. Like for me, it's very overt. Obviously it's made during during those sort of Cold War tensions. And obviously for me, it's overt because it's red. I don't know if I'm just misreading that. The fact that the blob is red is just that's what makes it super overt for me anyway.
No, I think it's definitely about
Yeah.
that.
One thing I thought was, and this, I guess this probably shows how little there really is a lot to say about the Blob besides like it's fun. But one of the first things I noticed when I watched it was produced by, I think his name is Jack H. Harris. I'm gonna double check because I just pulled it up to be double sure. Yeah, Jack H.
Yeah.
Harris, who, where I've been on my Carpenter run. He was the one who really jump started John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon's careers with Dark Star. He was the one that convinced them to take like their student film and turn it into a feature film, and then he would actually go on to produce The Eyes of Laura Mars, which was originally a screenplay by John Carpenter. So it was interesting to see that because that was really the highlight of his career. But to see that, and then and actually apparently he did a sequel to that. He was the director of the sequel because that's a thing. Let me see if I can find it again because it was like the only thing he did Unkissed Bride, but he produced, and I'm making this job really fun for Adam when he has to edit. Beware the Blob. There we go. Which I have not seen. I don't know if it's any good, but apparently it's a sequel.
I like Beware the Blob. I've never seen Beware the Blob, but I like it because I'm just reading here now. The tagline for Beware the Blob when it was released on home video was the movie that J.R. shot. That's the tagline for Beware the Blob. So I like it because of that. I have no idea if it's any good. I assume it's not good. I don't know if you didn't. You said you were going to try see it, Chris. Did you get around to it?
No, unfortunately not. But I was hoping there's a few sequels that are better than the original, and I was hoping that Beware the Blob would be one of them. So I'll let y'all know if I do see it. Although my hopes are not high.
I'm just wondering how it starts because obviously I don't know if
The
I want
Arctic melted.
to. No, actually, apparently, an oil pipeline layer was in the North Pole and then returned home to suburban Los Angeles and brought the blob with him. So there we go. That's how Beware the Blob starts. That's how the blob returns.
That's a very Godzilla kind of plot. All these Godzilla movies are about like people messing up the environment and causing Godzilla to come wreak havoc, and it's a very Godzilla plot.
Yeah, oh yeah, that is sort of environmentalism is very sort of prevalent in like monster movies, and in a lot of horror movies as well. Obviously, the most genius one is The Happening by M. Night Shyamalan, um, uh, where it's the
What?
trees.
No.
Does am I misremembering that film, or does Mark Wahlberg like literally say, "Oh, it's the trees" or something like that, or is
Pretty
it just
much.
okay? Because I remember, I know obviously, I'm not enamoring myself to cinephiles that listen to us, but I did see The Happening. I have seen that movie, but it was so long ago, and obviously I know the famous GIF where he like has that sort of puzzled look as like as the sort of tree as the wind moves through the trees and he puts two and two together. But I didn't know if he literally said it's the trees.
Well, no matter what, the one thing I will give The Happening, it is better than Fat Girl.
Ouch.
Hot take. Hot take. The Happening is better. You've heard it here first, folks.
What if The Happening is a sequel to Fat Girl?
It's
Yeah.
one of those sequels you were just talking about that outdid its original.
I was going to tell y'all I hadn't seen The Happening, but then when you described it, it brought back some old memories. I think I saw that in the theater, and I remember just sitting there in the chair being like, what the hell is happening right now? Because it's like,
Yeah, I think it came out in like 2008, around that time.
that's right.
Yeah, and who plays Mark Ruffalo? Why do I think Zoe Deschanel played Mark Ruffalo's wife?
Yeah, she's there.
Oh my God, okay. Wow, I remember more about that film than I thought I did. I literally
Remember more
saw it
than
when
I
it
do.
came out. I literally saw it when it came out, and it's obviously terrible.
I swear he made The Last Airbender just to say, look, that's not my worst movie. I made The Last Airbender.
So on the Blob, um, Stephen McQueen, who's 28 years old. I really want to look up the rest of the ages of the teenagers, but like none of them have Wikipedia pages. Um, Robert Fields, he's the only one of the teenagers as they are credited in the opening credits, who played the teenager of Tony, who yeah, you know as much as I do. But he was only 1 year younger than Steve McQueen.
Yeah, and then the girl who played his girlfriend, she said she was born in 1933 on her IMDb, so she was 25.
Yeah, so they're they're in no way, shape, or form teenagers. And like to be fair, she can probably get away with it. She kind of looked young. She could probably pass for 18.
Mm-hmm.
Steve McQueen could not pass for 18. That dude, that dude had gray on the side of his head. He had gray hair, he had gray hair and he had, tension lines in his forehead. That dude could not pass for 18. I don't know whose decision that was,
I
but it
mean,
was
he was just held back a lot.
that dude just cannot do math.
That's why nobody believed him. They're like, look, this guy did not find aliens. There's no way he was held back 7 times.
It reminds me of it's like they're not taking him seriously because it reminds me of, isn't there like a film or where Tara Reid plays like a scientist?
I wouldn't doubt it. In all honesty, her career has made some
And it just
bad
reminds me of that. It's
decisions.
like who's gonna believe that this person actually knows what they're talking about?
My favorite one like that is Denise Richards playing a nuclear scientist in a
That's
Bond
it.
movie.
Yes, it wasn't Tara Reid. It was Denise. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's
Isn't
immediately
isn't her name
believable.
like Christmas Jones or something silly like that as well? I'm pretty sure that's her name, like Christmas Jones or something ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's something Christmas for sure.
All I've learned is Adam has a really good memory, much better than mine.
Yeah, I can't even tell you what Bond movie that's in. I just know it exists.
It's a Pierce Brosnan one.
Okay, so that means they're terrible. Okay.
Yeah, Christmas Jones, you were right. That's awesome.
Christmas Jones. What film was it?
The world is not enough.
Oh yes. Okay. I've definitely seen that one, so that makes sense. It'd be weird if I knew it and hadn't seen it, but that happens a lot as well. I know more. I know a lot about films that I've never seen either. And that wraps nearly everything up. We have our final segment as always, which is any other business, where we just talk about something that we've seen recently that we, want to talk about. Doesn't have to be Criterion, doesn't have to be good, just, something that we've seen that we liked and we want to give a shout out to. I'm going to start this week, guys, if that's okay. I have been going on a Fritz Lang marathon, a Langathon, if you will, where I'm trying to watch all of his available films. Some of his films that he did early in his career are considered lost, unfortunately, but I'm trying to make my way through all of his available films, whether by like buying them physically or, if I can get them on streaming anywhere, I'm doing that too. And I got a batch order in this week of a few of his films. A couple of them came through Eureka Masters of Cinema, who in Region B have the rights to like the majority of his films. And then there was one film that, if I'm honest, I hadn't even heard of. And it wasn't released by a major boutique label. It's by this really small boutique in Region B called Signal One Media, who just do really, really obscure stuff. It's not like super high quality like a Criterion or even like a Eureka release or anything like that. But I was like pleasantly surprised. The film was called Manhunt from 1941. And it was released by this guy Signal One Media, and it's a really nice presentation. The picture quality of the transfer is really, really good. It has even a few special features on it as well. So you know kudos to them for releasing this. And the film itself is really, really fun. It's very sort of Hitchcockian, sort of espionage thriller. Um, Basically, it's about this guy. He's like this British captain, and this is like just prior to World War II. So Britain hadn't yet like announced or declared war on Germany, but tensions were high, and this guy is basically out hunting. He's like a world renowned hunter, and he's out hunting in like the German wilderness, and he stumbles across Hitler's big sort of compound, and he basically gets Hitler in his sights of his rifle, and just before he's about to shoot him, he gets tackled by a guard and is brought in and just beaten and tortured and interrogated and everything like that. Um, and it basically follows him as he escapes the Germans and makes his way back to Britain, but he ends up being sort of followed there by German agents. And he has to shack up with the working class British, just a normal working class British girl played by Joan Bennett, doing the most unconvincing British accent ever. It's very much like oh blimey governor kind of accent. It's so like I love Joan Bennett. She's probably my favorite actress of the 40s. I love her in all Fritz Lang's films that she shows up in. I don't know whose idea it was to have her play someone British, because her accent is awful. And even the main character, who's played by Walter Pidgeon, at least he doesn't even try and put on an accent. He literally sounds American the whole way through the film. and to add to that, the Nazi captain who basically took this guy in and did all the torturing and is in charge of tracking him down is played by what's his name? He's in George Sanders, who is in Rebecca from Hitchcock, and in Foreign Correspondent from Hitchcock, and he's a very, very British man playing a German Nazi. So if you take away the casting and the questionable casting aside, the film is really, really fun. It has like that typical sort of Lang cinematography and shot composition that makes everything just look really, really cool. And it's sort of maybe expressionist in some viewpoints as well. But it has that Hitchcockian funness about it, like the 39 Steps or like Foreign Correspondent. It's a really fun film to watch. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was kind of blown away by it because I'd never heard of it up until I had gone investigating, all of Long's films to put together a sheet of where I'm going to put in all my thoughts. Yeah, Manhunt, 1941 by Fritz Lang. Really, really enjoyable film. If you can get your hands on it, on the disc or find it streaming somewhere, I would really, really recommend it.
I wonder if this is the first of that kind of narrative around prisoner of war or criminal escaping and finding themselves in the hands of a farm girl or a rural woman. And because you remember when you saw Samurai 1 recently, right? The Musashi Miyamoto story has kind of a plot there as well. And I feel like there's a few movies that have this kind of rough, like we're escaping and we end up in an obscure farm and then maybe potentially fall in love or at least learn a lot about ourselves.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's a really like that kind of idea of an everyman caught up in something and ending up on the run shows up a lot, especially in espionage films. Like the 39 Steps is like a really key example of that, where he ends up accidentally meeting up with a spy who gives him information that he shouldn't know, and he ends up on the run and ends up somewhere rural. So it's something that happens a lot in espionage films. This was like the first of 4, and it's gonna sound really weird to say this phrase, but it's the only way I can describe it. It's the first of 4 anti-Nazi films, if that sound And I mean that in the historical context of when this film came out, because obviously remember the US was neutral, and this film was seen to be anti-Nazi and very pro-British and pro going to war, essentially. So there was this, Ministry of Fear, Hangmen Also Die, and Cloak and Dagger were like the four films that Long made in like a sequence that all were considered, anti-Nazi and trying to get the public sympathies towards saying we should be siding with the British and go to war against these guys. There's a funny quote I was reading up on the Wikipedia page, and there's a funny quote from one of the guys in the Hayes office, called Joseph Breen, who was alarmed by it and called it a hate film, if you can imagine that. The film about how bad Nazis are was called a hate film.
Wow.
So that's to put him in a bit more of a historical context. At this time, obviously in a neutral US, World War II hadn't been declared. They hadn't invaded Poland, which, well, in the context of when the film is set, this is obviously 1941. They had invaded Poland at this time, and that's how the film ends, with the invasion of Poland. But yeah, the whole sort of idea of this film was to maybe sway public sympathy towards, going to war against the Nazis.
Yeah, I guess for the U.S., the earliest that I know of, and probably the most well-known example, would be The Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin's.
Yeah.
And that was 1940. And that was looked down pretty negatively, I believe, at the time.
But it's kind of interesting that a lot of the guys who did make these kind of films were the ones who would end up almost getting blacklisted or have their sort of alliances questioned sort of after the war. So obviously, like Fritz Lang is obvious, he fled Germany to get away from the Nazis. So it's obvious he would make one. Obviously, Charlie Chaplin, I believe he was blacklisted at some point, if I remember correctly, if my film history knowledge is up to scratch. So it's kind of interesting, the guys who would end up making these anti-fascism films and have these anti-fascist messages would be the ones that would then get blacklisted about 10, 20 years later for apparently being pro-communist. So you never really seem to win with the US government.
That's probably the best. That's the tagline for the podcast. But anyways,
yeah. So what did you see, Chris? What did you like?
Yeah, just to finish that thought, my favorite anti-Nazi film from that era has always been Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be. Have any of y'all seen that?
No, I actually haven't.
Oh, it's brilliant. They just it's a good comedy that really pokes fun at like the incompetence of the military units and stuff. Anyways, it's brilliant, and the fact that it was made, production was in 1941 and then released in 42, is pretty. It's always been a big fan of that movie. But I'll have to check out Manhunt, because I'm just impressed with the bravery that goes into that, to be able to do that, especially from a European. But
yeah.
So I'll keep my section is going to be short. I started a new job. I think I told y'all. So this week has been the least amount of films I've probably seen in like 2 years. But there's one that really stood out. There's Arrow Video has released 2 volumes of something they call Nikatsu Diamond Guys, and it's essentially these Japanese movies that came out where they got a troupe of actors together, and it's sort of like a boy band, honestly. Like, it's a very similar process. They found a bunch of young, handsome men, in their view, these guys that were going to be kind of celebrities, and went through this whole process of trying out like 10,000 young men, and they found out their faces of their franchise, and they made a bunch of sort of crimey noir sort of films. And one of the big names, I don't know if y'all are familiar with this guy named Joe Shishido. He came out of that. Adam, you're shaking your head.
From Branded to Kill.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of famous for his distinguishing chin and cheeks, puffy cheeks.
Yeah, cheek enhancement surgery that he got.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. He genuinely got cheek enhancement surgery.
Yeah, totally. And there's this great guy. Zach, you might be familiar with this horror guy named Robert Zadar. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know him.
The distinguishing chin.
Yeah.
Joe Shishido's cheeks are almost that comically big at times.
That's awesome.
But these big old cute puffy cheeks. But anyway, so this is an early film before the cheek enhancement surgery, but he's recognizable still, and it's really it's noteworthy, I think, just for 2 reasons. So it's a Seijun Suzuki film, so it's fun to watch early Suzuki, and just like the director that I've done a run on recently is Kurosawa, and I think there's a similar here. Coincidence that they're both Japanese. Their styles really couldn't be more different. But Kurosawa had some particular kind of storytelling techniques that were on display in his early movies, but like you could tell it wasn't really fully his project yet. And once he really got going is when it became like a Kurosawa film. And then Suzuki is similar, is more visually kind of striking, and he plays with like cinematography and angling and making you feel like you're tripping out sometimes just by what he does with the camera. And there was two moments that really stood out in the movie's called Voice Without a Shadow. Sorry. So it's the first film in this Nikatsu Diamond Guys set. So Voice Without a Shadow, early Suzuki, and there's two scenes that really stand out. One is there's the character's head that stands still, and the background is twisting. So they must have somehow secured the camera to the body because the head is like completely still the whole time. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty trippy effect. And then the other one is they play a lot with broken mirrors and like very selectively placed sort of panes of glass in a broken mirror that displays a lot of the confusion and kind of trauma that's going on inside the person's mind at that time. So anyways, it's early, the film itself, I'd say if it didn't have those visual elements and you didn't know it was a Suzuki film, probably a pass, probably not something you'd have to see. It's a relatively straightforward plot. I wouldn't say it adds much to the genre, but it does have really good, beautiful, kind of striking contrast, black and white filming. And it's got just enough Suzuki, I think, to make it worth watching. So that's what I'll push for the week. What about you, Zach?
Probably my favorite movie I watched during the week, and I have more extended thoughts on the website, but probably The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which was a 2018 film by first-time director Henry Dunham. Essentially, the movie follows this guy who is part of a private militia group who obviously they're in secret because they're not allowed to exist, and they have tons of automatic weapons, Kevlar vests, some IEDs. One night on the radio, on the police scanner, they hear that a police officer's funeral has been shot up with automatic weapons. So what they do is they all have to meet within 10 minutes to their meet spot, which is in a lumber yard, and just to make sure none of them were involved. And once they get there, they realize that one of their automatic ARs are missing, along with several Kevlar vests. So the whole movie kind of does this, kind of builds on this tension of one of these men who's involved in this militia have committed this crime, and they're trying to figure out which one had done it, so the whole militia group doesn't go down with them. Essentially, they would want to give them up to the police and just wash their hands of the whole situation. So the main guy, who is a former police officer, is there to interrogate the people he believes it is. Very good movie. I really like it. Has Adam, you might be somewhat interested in it. It has a very deep noir look while it's in color. Focuses a lot on shadows, a lot on harsh lighting, and it works really great because it's in such a mute location like a lumberyard that it really helps the film stand out. It really helps you stay engaged. It's great. It's a great looking film. It's a brisk like 86 to 90 minutes. It's a very quick film, but it just keeps you hooked about the whole time. I guess in concept it's similar to Reservoir Dogs.
I was about to
with
say,
a lot more bleakness.
Yeah, this reminds me kind of Reservoir Dogs. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so that's mine. I think it's available on Hulu if anybody has that. I know, Adam, you don't have that in your country, but it's good to watch. It's a good fun watch.
Yeah, sounds good.
I've been furiously searching in the background in hopes that it's the brother of Lena Dunham, but it looks like they're not connected. So,
well, that is a little disappointing.
Yeah.
God damn. That wraps up this week's episode of They Live by Film. If you want to read more of our thoughts, visit theylivebyfilm.com. And you can also follow our Letterboxd, Reddit, and Instagram accounts from the links in the description. For now, take care.